to the new episode of AI Chronicles. And I am Sonam, as you guys know. And a special thanks to all my YouTube and Spotify subscribers. I sincerely appreciate your support and feedback. So what do we have planned today? Well, here we have Mrinal, who is a senior software engineering manager at Intel and a champion at ethical AI at Intel. Um, how did we meet? Well, I attended a in-person event for it was called, I think, Responsible AI event, which occurred in person in Santa Clara last year, and I was very impressed, and I learned a great deal about, what responsible AI is, what ethical AI is from Renal. And she gave a very engaging and interactive presentation. So that's how we met. And I thought for this new episode, what better topic to cover than ethical AI, which I believe has a huge importance in the entire AI space and something that people should definitely be aware of, whoever's interested in AI or who are already there and working in the AI space. So let's get started before any further ado. Are you ready, Mrinal, for the
Yes,
cool
thank you.
questions we've planned? Awesome.
Thank you so much, Sonam, for having me here, and lovely to talk about this topic that is so close to my heart.
Absolutely. All right. So, first, very general and I would say basic question, but an important one. Could you help me understand what is the difference between responsible AI and ethical AI?
Sure. So those are two very closely related terms, and sometimes
Mhm.
people do use them interchangeably. Ethical AI mainly and specifically concerns with studying and addressing the effect of AI on our society and on human values primarily. So it addresses questions like, is AI, are we using AI for good? Is it causing any unintended bias? On the other hand, responsible AI is a much broader term, and it encompasses the development, deployment, and use of AI to minimize the harm and maximize the benefit. It's an umbrella term that encompasses ethics as well as other principles like safety, security, trustworthiness, transparency. So, in short, ethical AI is about knowing to do good with AI, and responsible AI is about how we do good with AI.
That's very well put. How we put AI. That makes total sense. And I think in my experience, people often get confused within these terms. Like I remember before your presentation last year, I was definitely confused. Like, okay, ethical AI and then responsible AI, aren't they synonymous? But yeah, there's a very clear difference. Thank you for sharing that. So that leads me to the next question, especially about your involvement and enthusiasm into this field. So, like, how did you first become involved in this, I guess, subfield of AI?
Yeah, so I've been working on taking products from incubation to scale for a very long time now. So very earlier on, when I started with software development at Intel, I learned that building great products is not just about writing functional code. It's much more than that. You know, you have to think about security. And then I have worked on projects that involved dealing with data a lot. So I learned about data governance, regulation, and software legal compliance. And then when I started building AI products, that naturally translated and it was an extension by itself. So at Intel, I started formally my ethical AI journey with a program called as Ethical AI Champion that was specifically designed to help teams in their AI journey. So I helped provide leadership and guidance on how we can incorporate responsible AI principles into the products. And then, I got to know of the AI incident database, and I read a couple of incidences and stories of how AI was causing harm and especially affecting minorities. And I was deeply involved, deeply touched by that, and deeply affected by that. And I wanted to do much more than I was doing at my day job. And that's when I started delivering talks, conducting courses and lectures and panels on this topic. And then recently, I also got the opportunity to share my industry perspective and expertise to shape the IEEE AIS standards criteria for
Mhm.
privacy and algorithm bias as part of an experts reviewer group. So that's how my journey started.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah, you pointed out really good that it's not just about writing a functional code. It's so much more when it comes to delivering products. That's pretty good. So while you when you started this journey and how, step by step you got involved, what are your top concerns regarding ethics, especially in this, current wave of generative AI?
Yeah, so more specifically for generative AI, I think misinformation is one of the top concerns. Now,
Mm,
a generative AI can be used to create content that looks authentic but is not authentic, right?
mhm,
With deep fakes, that's a very, very big threat.
mm,
And, uh, deep fakes have the potential to cause a lot of like chaos in terms of there was this recent example of Pentagon on fire. So there was definitely a lot of chaos and uncertainty, but it may also affect someone at a very individual level, especially with we are seeing the deep fakes with celebrities where it's much more personal impact, and it has scope to do a lot more damage. Anybody can be impersonated, and people can be looked to say they can be seen looking and doing things that they were not actually doing. And I think young population is most vulnerable here because they don't have
mhm,
any frame of reference. Then there are other concerns like potential for weaponizations, bioengineering. If we don't have right safeguards around LLMs, like they can turn anyone into a threat actor. Then there are other concerns like privacy. There are novice privacy kind of attacks that can be engineered. And the other concern, not so much on the AI application side, but on the societal side, is the pace at which this field is growing, and the pace at which everybody's getting reskilled. So that pace needs to match. Otherwise, there is going to be a lot of stress and struggle, and people have to have a good enough ramp up time for reskilling. So those are some of my top concerns, especially in the generative AI space.
right. Deepfake sounds scary. Yeah, the other day I was talking about this with my parents, and they asked me, like, especially my mother, like, what is this term? And then trying to explain it to her as best as I can, like, people could impersonate, could use their images in the false manner. So, like, how would you suggest people who may not be fully trained in AI, but maybe have like some idea how to be aware or like, be careful about, especially deepfakes?
Yes. So first is look for authentic sources, right? A lot of things
Mm,
get circulated even otherwise. So establishing the authenticity of the source is very important. And this is a very challenging problem that is being solved at many different levels. I think with President Biden's recent AI Act
mm,
on safety and security, they are considering any kind of government communication to have like a watermark, right? So they are looking
right.
for novel ways of establishing that authenticity. So I would say for day-to-day life, verify the source. That's the main thing. And
Hmm.
if it's someone personal, if someone it's best to reach out to them. And then even for like transactions, for secure transactions, right? It always helps to kind of reconfirm and confirm from many different sources, especially it's like a one-off thing and very kind of personal thing. Yeah.
Hmm. That's a good suggestion. Yeah. So, as an AI industry professional like yourself, do you like have you gone or undergo any training to understand various types of ethical concerns or biases in your work?
Yeah, so this field is pretty evolving, and I think it's also the landscape is changing a lot. It's pretty new.
Hmm.
It's kind of like, everybody's starting to seeing that lately. So when I
Hmm.
started, there weren't any courses or anything of that sort.
Right.
There were just basic white papers and things like that. So I started there. And now there's a lot of like good courses, introductory courses at least available. So that's a good start. But for basic things, for more advanced things, right, it involves much more than training. The way
Mm.
you can, keep on top of things is first like carve out time to read through research papers, and if you get opportunities, participate as a reviewer or as a panel in conferences. And then there are workshops that happen time and off, and then there is also like new legislature that comes in that you can spend the time to dig through. So I would say that there is not, for the advanced kind of portion of it, there's not as much structured learning there, but you have to kind
Hmm.
of chart your own path. And also it's interesting based on your domain, right? Because some of the things are very domain specific, like the concerns for
Right.
healthcare will be different than concerns
Right.
from finance. So you will have to kind of, customize it more so for your
Mm.
field, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense because yeah, I remember when I was working at a mortgage company, I like we had this training and it was not just like those, small videos on compliance training, which was painful to go through. But I understood like the importance of it. But then there were like some, how to understand like the ethical concerns or biases in the data itself. So I think, yeah, you pointed out right, like it will be customized a little bit depending on domain or industry to industry. That makes sense. So, moving on to like understanding more about responsible AI, could you maybe provide us with some examples of considerations for responsible AI before you operationalize any AI solutions in the company?
Yes, sure, sure. I think the very first thing to assess is, does use of AI may add value, right? Sometimes people just want to put in AI solutions because there is like a lot of like, industry
Hype.
push. Yeah, a hype,
Yeah.
yes. But you have to really assess if AI makes sense in this context. So I think that's the very first consideration. Once you have done that, you need to establish what principles are important for your team or for your organization. Why it is important is because that provides like a structured framework for you to prioritize and make some trade-off decisions, because it's not always going to be black and white. They're mostly grays.
Yeah.
So and then it also helps you to communicate with your customers, stakeholders, as to how you have made decisions. So that's the other important thing. And then the another important consideration is very crisply defining who your end users are. If we don't do that, and if it's like pretty broad, then there is much more opportunity for biases to creep in, because then you cannot define and refine your data in that regard, or you cannot have your validation crisply done. So I think that defining that group is very important. And I cannot stress more on this, but it is very important to have diverse teams which also have domain experts, because having AI, how to build AI products and the whole AI process of training, deploying, and all of that is one aspect. But domain expertise is another aspect where we need to evaluate if it's doing the right thing. So yeah, those are some of the primary considerations before you even think about operationalizing AI solutions.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, it's stirring lots of thoughts in my mind right now. Really good examples. So, like there, as you mentioned, like there are numerous aspects, especially when you consider developing a responsible AI solution that, it should align with companies' ethical values, such as you can name it like fairness, transparency, accountability, and so on and so forth. Like, how would you address these factors, especially when you and your team aim to like, operationalize these solutions you have built? Yeah. I know you've touched it a little bit, but yeah, if you can
Yes,
elaborate.
yes. Yeah. So I think once you have your user needs, you translate those to data needs. The first step is the data analysis. First is making sure that you have data, enough data, and you are sourcing unbiased data with the right consent, right? Seeking right consent. And you have to make sure and ensure the quality of data. There are several ways of doing that. There is visualization, you can look for outliers, there are fairness matrix that you can define, so that is the guiding principle of all your data analysis. So once there are a lot of biases that can creeping in the data stage itself, like there is historical bias where if you're training on data that is too old, that can creep in. There is measurement bias, and then there is representation bias where you may have underrepresented groups. So making sure that the data analysis, you spend some time on it. Sometimes you can even use synthetic data to boost some of the samples that you don't have. So using those techniques is definitely a good idea. Then when you come to the algorithm and the model building phase of things, then you need to be very mindful of certain biases that can creep in, like there is a learning bias. So for example, if you're optimizing for compactness, or if you're optimizing for privacy where you cannot collect a lot of data, and then as a result the accuracy gets affected. So you need to be mindful of those trade-offs and decide what threshold makes sense for your solution. Then there are other things like evaluation bias that can creep in. So for example, if there is some benchmark data that you can use to make sure that the model is performing as intended, and if that is not representative of use population, then it's a problem. So there are many such things. Then you can do a model sensitivity analysis where you can test your model with different inputs and different conditions and check how it's behaving. So those are some of the data concerns with model building and data analysis. That's like bias. But then there are
Right.
other things like making sure your solution is safe, and that you don't have any protecting them from any potential security attacks. So you need to have continuous monitoring and automation to make sure that your model is behaving the way you intend to be it behave. And then not everything can be automated, so you definitely need
Right.
to have human in the loop to make sure model is performing as intended. So that's on the operationalizing side of things. But very important is sometimes this neglected aspects in marketing, that when you are explaining it to your users, you need to explain it in the simple terms and not in technical jargons. They should understand how decisions are made, and they should have a mechanism to challenge some of those decisions. You definitely need to plan for some high touch customer support, so that there is someone to receive that call and look into the situation. Also, being transparent with users on how you're collecting data and how they can request deleting and this data and the privacy aspects of it. So that's some of the concerns and some of the kind of mechanisms you can use to
Right.
operationalize AI.
That's very well said. So from what I understand, do you think the biases, and there are like tons of varieties of biases that, some of us don't even know about. Would you say that the biases in the data level or the data set level versus the model levels would be different? So this actually leads me to my next question is that what, like, how would you, like, if you have any suggestions of how we could identify such biases? So, like, the ones that I'm familiar with are like, the gender bias or racial bias, ethnicity bias, and so on
Yeah.
and so forth. And some of the new ones that you mentioned, not new ones, but like towards on the model side, model evaluation side. So how would you suggest we could identify those?
Yeah. So it's much more holistic process. So first is like as a team, you need to decide, what are your fairness metrics? Because some of
Hmm.
them are even conflicting, and you have to choose one. So just to give an example, right? Say for example, you're designing an AI application for screening college admissions, right? To university admissions. So you can in this aspect, right? If you examine the data, you might come to a conclusion that maybe, there are not many female applicants, right? So
Mhm.
how do we build this system so that they are not negatively impacted because there are no data samples? So you can decide maybe a policy. There are multiple policies for you to choose from. So first is like group unaware, right? Just few examples. There are more than 70 plus fairness metrics, but group unaware is something like you do not consider the group of the person that belongs to. So it could be
Mm.
either the gender, or it could either be maybe ethnicity and other things. So that would not be fair in this case. Then what is our next best thing, right? Then we could do group
Right.
thresholds. So what we could say is that okay, we are going to accept female applicants with this threshold versus male applicants with another threshold.
Mm.
So there are many such fairness matrix, and there are tools to help you get there. So, for example, there is AI Fairness 360 toolkit. I think it's open source. There's about 70 plus matrix, and then it also has about 10 bias mitigation algorithms for common use cases. So you could explore
Mm.
some of that. So first step would be the data analysis, and there are a couple of good tools for data analysis too that will help you to kind of weed out these outliers and to understand more about your data. And then it's a collective team decision as to what our group metrics are. And then there are other tools to help you to get there in terms of biases and mitigating those. It's
Got
a
it.
complex
Wow.
problem, and even if you deploy
Yeah.
this, right, and once you deploy this in production, you often need to recheck because your data points are going to change,
Mm,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Wow, that was some good information. Um, all right, so like pivoting a little bit, coming to AI regulation, what is your opinion on current AI regulations?
Mhm. Sure. So there are a couple of AI regulations in flight. I think the furthest along is the EU AI Act. Then we also have the US blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. And most recently, we have President Biden's executive order on AI for safety, security, and the trustworthiness. So I think they are definitely the right steps in good steps in the right direction. And it's some are I would say EUAI Act is little bit more stringent in terms of meeting the requirements. So that's one aspect. While with the US, the act, the way kind of things are shaping up, it's more flexible. So there is more like freedom. But it comes at a cost of like affecting and how we are going to address those things. So I would say it's all shaping up, and they're definitely positive steps. And in I think in about a year or two, that's going to formalize. And I think most companies are going to have to start preparing to on how we are going to
Mm.
comply to those.
Right. So especially since Biden government came out with the regulation and idea or the policy, do you think there are like, have you seen any opposition to that, especially if, like from other companies or AI professionals? Or do you think like people are on board with what the government has planned or is planning?
I think there are two camps, right? I have
Mm.
seen some like good reactions. I've seen some reactions where people are mostly skeptical as to how that's going
Mm.
to pan out. Some aspects are very loosely defined, and they are like, still in definition. So most of it kind of is towards federal government and how they're going to implement it. But various agencies, is like a delegation model. So various agencies are going to have some time, like 90 days, 150 days, to come up with their own proposals. So it's going to be it's uniform, right? It's not going to be uniform. There is going to be some kind of friction there. But there is like some stringent requirements on reporting that I have seen,
Mm.
and I think people might be reacting a little bit to that because it goes a little bit against maybe it's infringing the privacy. So for example, for infrastructure as a service, there is a requirement that if anyone is kind of building foundational models, then there is a reporting requirement, even though they are not like US citizens. So that's more stringent, and some people are reacting to that. But I personally
Got
think
it.
it's a positive step.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you on that. Uh, yeah, so I have like a last question, which I think I'm sure many people would find it engaging or interesting. What advice would you give, especially to those who are in the early stages of their careers or, transitioning into AI or just generally curious about responsible and ethical AI?
Yeah, so first thing I would like to say that you are first doing the right thing. I think you're curious. That's amazing. What I want to say is that this is no longer going to be, something like an add-on or it's optional, right? It's going to be
Mhm.
pretty much mandatory. And the earlier you learn about it, I think you'll be able to be a kind of a holistic, you'll be able to do a holistic AI development, and you'll be able to deploy your products globally. So having
Mm,
that understanding is very important, because there is a societal aspect of it, but there is also the aspect of customer adoption, regulations. So for your AI products to be even productized and operationalized, it's an important consideration. So definitely, like, there are a lot of good resources out there. So for example, AI for Good by Deep Learning AI is a really good
mm,
course, and there are many such available resources, so please kind of explore those. It's also a good idea to seek mentorship on this aspect.
mm,
And then there are lots of opportunities now where, locally there are lots of workshops, even with on the government policy regulations. People are conducting public forums, so you can go participate in those. And I think that the best way to learn is also to teach about it. So you can
Oh
also
yeah.
considering being an advocate and teaching about the courses and spreading awareness. Yeah.
Totally agree, especially with the teaching and mentorship part. I think I've personally gained a lot of knowledge and, wisdom through those two techniques. Yeah. But yes, I think that concludes our podcast or recording today. Thank you so much, Mrinal, for this very informative call. I learned a great deal, and I'm pretty sure our audience is going to learn and be excited about it as well after listening to your answers and ideas. So, yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sonam. It's my pleasure, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk more about responsible AI.